I think each individual cheesemaker has their own creativeness. For me, I really like the idea of going out there and trying something and see if you can change how somebody else has been doing something for centuries. We started milking cows back in '78, bought the farm here in Denmark. The change from being a dairy farmer and becoming a cheesemaker really occurred with the talk of deregulation within the dairy industry. Having such a small farm, 165 acres and milking 40 cows, I could see that it wasn't going to be sustainable. So the idea, my dad being from Switzerland, was to take the own milk and make that into a cheese product and value add to the farm. I managed to get a position over in Switzerland and started working just in a cheese factory as a labourer. I walked into doing an apprenticeship in making cheese, and from there I then did a bachelor degree in dairy science. So to make cheese, there's just a few basic components that we require. We have milk, and in Australia we have to pasteurise that milk. Then we need bacteria, and we need bacteria to ferment the product. We need to ferment the product to preserve it. We need some rennet. This turns the milk into a coagulant, which we can then cut, and that then pulls moisture out of the cheese, preserves our milk fats and proteins. And then we need salt as well as preservative. That's really all that we really need to make milk into cheese. You have to turn the cheese and wash the baby's bottoms. This washing allows certain bacteria like B. lignans to create a colour, an orange colour on the rind. And those are very important bacteria and moulds to actually then create flavour within the cheese. So there's a lot of creativeness in how you choose your cultures and how you work with those cultures. It's like a painter, selecting paints and having a look at that colour. But a cheesemaker hasn't got that thing where the result is immediate. You can't just finish off your cheese and this is what it is. The cheese is sometimes a year in maturity, 2 years in maturity, and if it's a Parmesan, it's 3 years in maturity. At the moment I'm going down a course where I'm really trying to use Australian herbs, native herbs. It's interesting how little you actually need in the product to just get a subtle change, and then you can really achieve a different taste. I think one of the things that I love most about being a cheesemaker is, dare I say it, the early morning starts. You wake up in the morning and you know exactly what you're going to do for the next 2-3 hours. It doesn't matter if the phone rings, I can't answer it. I'm at the cheese now, and that's my life.
Yeah, so that's Chris and our little factory. He started that off in 2010, just sort of making some projects on the side after quite a lot of extensive training in Switzerland. And it's been a gradual process. He, coming from a farming background, didn't come in with a lot of capital investment, so it's been a build by build process. And about 2 years ago, we managed to get a bigger pasteuriser, so we went from 150 litres per batch through to, 180 through to 500. So that's 2 years ago, and now we're looking at the next extension of further cooling rooms and cellars and that kind of thing. So growth-wise, it's been a slow and steady. We're in the medium-term business. Cheese takes a while to age. We need to invest in buying that milk, making the cheese, and then ripening it before we can actually sell it as well. So the products we make ranges from fresh cheeses, generally over summer. Some of the local wineries like to get those. Your soft white moulds, which ripen for 3 weeks. And then you see them sort of within 2 months in the supermarket. We have semi-firm cheeses, and this is starting to get into Chris's speciality of the Alpine style, that washed rind. So we have those for anywhere from 3 to 9 months. And then our Gruyere, which was one of the champion cheeses this year, is out for sort of 9 to 12 months plus. We've got a lot of old stuff in the cellar, and we look after it, and those will need to get washed every week or so. So where do we supply? Well, on our website we've basically got a map with the shops that we've supplied to. It's retail through the IGAs and specialty stores. We also go to restaurants and wineries. Generally it's called out at those establishments. We lose track of where we're selling to because it goes to our wholesalers through food service. So we'll sell it to, say, Pacific Foods Distribution here in Albany, ex-Southways. and also through some Perth agents as well. As I said, we've got 3 week to 12-month-old cheeses, and the speciality that Chris is pushing for is the native herb washes and infusions within the cheese. Our operations for this financial year, we are a small operation. We only processed 100,000 litres of milk, which is about 10% of our dairy farmers' production. So we get our milk from Malcolm Hick, who's got one of the first robotic dairies on the south coast, and he's our neighbour. We adjust his cows when they're young as well, so there's a very close relationship between the 2 properties. Staff-wise, there's 1 full-time cheesemaker, being Chris, and also business owner and all that comes with it, as well as 1 casual packer. We have a sales agent in Perth, and we basically get a weekly order list, as well as we do our own orders around locally. So basically there's been a high investment in the build. With that added pasteuriser, we now have the capacity to triple production, and that would then mean employing someone else to train with Chris and learn the ropes. And that's kind of where we are, but it's an interesting balance trying to think about the risk to yourself when you're trying to pull your own livelihood out of the venture to then go from that 1-person operation to 2-person plus. So we are looking at the moment. Ideally we'd get someone with a bit of cheese making experience, but that's pretty rare in this area. So just a snapshot of, I guess, the retail supply chain and how that works. These are just examples. They've all been adjusted back to a $10 price for what we would sell it for, just to give the relative comparison. So say we sold a cheese at $10, our local supermarket would put a flat rate on that of $2 per transaction, which we like. Means it's the end consumer has a better price. What usually happens is retailers will put a gross profit margin on at 40%, which means that of their sale price that you see in the supermarket, 40% of that is going to the store, and then the rest is to the manufacturer. So you can see the price jump immediately, the difference in that method. In comparison, subsidised Jarlsberg, the shop might buy in at 3/4 of the price that we can supply it, which is amazing considering it's made in Europe and it's transported here, all for a lower price. There's obviously strict controls within Europe about price tariffs and that kind of thing. But when you apply the gross profit margin to that, obviously as a percentage system, the cut from it is actually smaller than what you put on our cheese. So for exactly the same service of perhaps it's a wheel of cheese and the deli staff cut it up, or they put it in their fridge, maybe put some stickers around, that kind of thing, exactly the same service, the West Australian produce, which comes in at a higher price, is basically paying for more of the shop's costs in that regard. So we'd suggest that a flat rate, potentially how we've seen done in Europe, would be a better option. Speciality stores tend to put 100% markup on the produce, and then interstate supply, which we're just entering, there is obviously that next layer of distribution in there. So transport costs are only about double what we'd supply up to Perth, and then they would put a 30% on that to truck it Queensland or New South Wales. And then the retailer putting their gross profit margin on the end, that percentage system then bulks it out. So what started off as $10 ex-factory is suddenly up at the $26, $27 mark. So just to show you that we can produce things quite reasonably, but the supply chain is really important to the end price to the consumer. Opportunities for us is to build a solid foundation before expanding. A lot of the talk around, I guess the work that some of you have been doing has been about the export market. For us, it's more about consolidating what we have already. So the stats for Western Australia, I can't remember exactly, but about more than 90% of the cheese that we eat in Western Australia is imported into Western Australia. So there is people like cheese, we know that. We should be able to make it and sell it to people that live in WA. We do have interest from the East Coast. One of the points for us is that Chris, likes cheese. He's a bit of a jolly fellow. He went to learn to make cheese, decided he liked it, but he didn't really think it was a luxury product. When you're working in Europe and you eat a lot of cheese, that's part of your protein sources, whereas meat here is relatively cheaper. So we go and have a barbecue and we get our protein source from that, whereas in Europe you eat a lot more cheese because the meat's so bloody expensive. So have we done our marketing and branding right at all? Should we be aiming for that luxury product, which we haven't been? We just thought it was, we'll make some nice cheese and people can enjoy it, the toasties, and make raclette and that kind of thing. An example of that would be Must Wine Bar's just got a 17-star review in the West, which Russell Blake is very excited about, but he's using some of our cheese within that menu. But just a point to note that we've been supplying Taste Great Southern events for a number of years, probably 5+ years. It's very rare to actually get the follow-on call-up from those chefs to use your product later on. So that's a bit of a, they ring up asking for stuff, like a week before the event, but then don't actually follow through with it, with that branding further on. So for us, probably a push for marketing. Neither Chris or I have much background in this. We make a handcrafted product, we're using high quality milk, and it's from Denmark, which has a very good reputation for being clean and green as it is. Awards, we scooped the pool last year for a variety of different cheeses. Big one was probably the best small cheesemaker, Royal Show. A couple of cheeses went up to the Australian Awards, the Churchill Raclette and the Chadford Tilsit. Got pipped at the post there. And then we got the Dairy Industry Grand Champion for the Gruyere, as well as a bunch of other gold and silver awards on that. So it's recognised as being good quality cheese. Challenges to growth, well, again, it's that operational stuff. So demand on time as sales grows to make more cheese. And so events like this that Chris was already going, do I make cheese in the morning and then go in the afternoon? Which he was like, no, I'll go because I'm interested. And then has now got sick. So we're down a production day anyway. But that expertise is required. There's quality assurance both in the production stage and in the ripening or the affinage. The cutting of the curd is actually quite a delicate process. So we've had a couple of people, work experience with us over the last year or so, and some of them have great intentions, but they're just not gentle enough when it comes to that critical point in that process. So for a head cheesemaker, it's difficult to take that step back and trust that to someone when you've got all your finances riding on your stock. The other point to note is that unlike Europe, we have really abrupt seasonal changes in the milk, so that changes the recipes quite significantly. And you need to be tuned in with your farmer and what he's doing, what he's feeding his cows, what's happening in the paddock, so that you know what the milk's coming in like. Or you can buy some really fancy testing machines. So that person there in the hot steamy room with the hot milk needs to know what they're doing. So challenges to growth, again, big question is how do we get the product to market? We can make the product, but it's that marketing and sales that we're probably dropping in on. Farmers markets are great. We love our Denmark arts markets. It's a great chance to catch up with everyone. We get some good feedback, but it's a high time investment with low returns for that kind of venture. We require sales agents in Perth. So when things are organised like WA Cheese Week, which was a couple of weeks ago, sort of a fledgling operation, then we can go up for special events. But for us, that's now a 3-day trip instead of just a 1-day turnaround. Just to finish off with, Chris's question, is that obviously we're interested in the sales and distribution point of view. Is there an opportunity for regional businesses to get together and actually have a collective to improve the situation for what we're making? We make some good stuff, so let's get it out there. Cool, all right, thank you.